fasten your seatbelts. We're going on a quick ride around the world. This is my mom. She was a flight attendant for Pan Am, and I can almost guarantee this was a much more glamorous time and a much better flight than what I just took flying into Chicago. So this is how my mom saw the world. She's from England and my dad's from Belgium. And you can imagine her dismay at how I see the world. And this is how I look. I've just been tear gassed after the revolution in Nepal. And I was working on a newspaper when I got an assignment to go. It was a 3-week assignment to go to Nepal, and I ended up not leaving for 4 years. I felt like I'd really come home. Asia's really where my heart is. And it was a job for UNICEF, and I ended up photographing children in all aspects of their life: child labor, religion, ritual. And every morning before I open my eyes, I think, this is exactly where I want to be, exactly what I want to be doing. And while I was living over in Nepal, I got very interested in the Tibetan in exile situation. And this is in Kathmandu at Bodhanath Stupa. And I photographed all 57 settlements throughout India and Nepal and the 120,000 refugees that live over there, and looking at their diaspora and their story, which brought me into Tibet. And I've been going to Tibet nearly every year for the last 20 years. So I have a very strong kinship with people that live in the Himalayas. I feel we have a lot to learn from these traditional cultures and people. And I've been going more and more remote. This is a picture that is on the cover of the next National Geographic book. This was in a magazine, this little Tibet girl. And she's just left a horse festival. I'm just going to take you through a few of the Nomad Shots, because this is such a big body of my work. But I really love their headgear. And these are people that I found along the way and have photographed their sort of evolution and their different looks. This little boy admitted that he has no idea what his hat says. You can see the wind burn on her face, this natural wind burn. And Michael Jackson, alive and well and living in Tibet somewhere. And this woman just can't even understand what I found interesting to photograph about her. And I just love just finding these people along the way. This is the orange hat people that I have been following for a number of years. And really looking at like what the next culture is bringing in. What does it mean to live as a culture without a land? And looking at the next generation. So while I was living over there for many years, and I continue to go back, my first book was on Tibet, and the Dalai Lama heard what I was doing. So he rang me and asked to meet with me, which was obviously very exciting. And I sent a picture back to my parents saying, look, here's me with the Dalai Lama. And all they know is that I haven't been back for 4 years. See a photo of me with this guy with shaved head, monk's robes, and mala beads. My mom says, Frank, I think she's joined a cult. Go over there and get her. So my dad came over with my brother to do an intervention, seriously. And so now he's like a huge Tibet advocate. The Dalai Lama meets every refugee that comes over from Tibet. So I ended up doing a book on the Dalai Lama. I traveled with him for about 15 years. And this was the cover of the book that I did on him. I've done about 40 book covers of him. But the last time that I was there, because we've often had a lot of time together, and the last time that I visited him, this is walking from his home to his office. And I love this photo. It's such a symbol of peace. I'm just touching the guard and blessing him, holding the rifle. And I turned to him and I said, you know, thank you so much for your time. You know, I really want you to know that I really have the best of intentions. And he looked at me so directly and he said, yes, I know, good intent, most important in all that you do, always remember. And those words have really held such meaning to me, because I think as human beings, we don't always say and do the right thing. But what is our intent? You know, what is your intention? And I think about that not only in my daily life, but also when I'm making a photo. What is my intent? And I think that's how I'm able to communicate with people that I don't speak their language all over the world, and to really connect on some sort of heart level. So my life is really where I wanted it to be. And I was photographing a new book in Laos, a very small country in Southeast Asia. And I got on a bus, as so often I do in these countries. And the bus didn't make it. It got slammed by a logging truck. And I was at the point of impact. And I was in really, really bad way. My arm was practically severed off. I broke my back, my pelvis, all my ribs, incredible internal injuries. And these villagers dragged me to their village and stayed with me. Not only did they sew my arm back on with a needle and thread, but they stayed with me until I could get help 18 hours later. Back in Thailand, I was brought to a hospital. I was there 3 weeks in intensive care before I was medevac back to the States, where I was given the grim prognosis that I would never walk again, and I would certainly never work as a photojournalist. And I said, really? Because I plan on climbing Mount Kilimanjaro for my birthday next year. So they sent me to a psychiatrist, saying I was in denial. But 30 surgeries later, I did get back to being outdoors, kayaking, and then 2 years after the accident, I made it to the top of Kilimanjaro, which was huge. And that became the basis of this book that I wrote called Learning to Breathe. And so after 30 surgeries and really getting my life back, I'm now back doing what I love to do, traveling around the world. And so this latest book that I've done, Face to Face, Portraits of the Human Spirit, I'm just going to take you on a quick look through Vietnam and Burma, and really looking at people around the world that I think that there's, no matter how different we look, I find this global truth, Bhutan, that we are really the same the world over. We all want to love and be loved. We all want to have safety and health for our friends, our family, our children, ourselves. And we make it more complicated than it needs to be. And the Danu tribe in India, Juan Bastida on his 83rd birthday in Cuba, the girls in Pakistan that are struggling to go to school, Mexico, India, the eagle hunters in Mongolia, the Sikhs in the Punjab, and this little girl in Kashmir with all the guns going off around us, and she handed me a lotus flower. I shot 3 books for National Geographic on China, London, Great Britain. This is China. So just a quick look at some of the people. This is a man with his glasses in China and a boy emulating glasses in Rwanda. And then I did a book on children around the world. It's called Faces of Hope. And it's really looking at the resiliency and tenacity of children. And this was in developing countries. And I often like to photograph people with something that's important to them. And once I asked a man in Tibet, I said, I want to photograph you with your wife. And he said, my wife? I want to be photographed with my pig. So I now no longer presume what's important to people. Tanzania. So I spent a lot of time in the black slums in Africa. This is Ethiopia. And there's 81 tribes in the south alone. This woman is married. You can tell by the, she's of the Hammer tribe with this sort of spark plug thing around her neck. A little girl with her gourd. These are all just people I found along the way in Ethiopia. And again, just looking a little bit at the people that I've met along the way and our idea of beauty, the mud in the hair, the ochre, the different looks of the Omo Valley, and the Mercy people that have big lip plates. So I work with a lot of different magazines, and I've done a lot of work, for instance, like in islands. This is in St. Lucia. This is my room, and you can see there's just an infinity pool looking out on the Grand Tetons. And a recent trip to Papua New Guinea when I went down the Sepik River. And this is a man who has learned how to carve masks from his grandfather, passed down from generations. Tangi, who takes care of his grandparents. And then a story I did on the tattooing, the crocodile tattooing, where the men go in the longhouses and have rituals, and then they cut themselves, and the cuts become infected and raised to emulate looking like a crocodile. So I do a lot of humanitarian photography as well. This was covering the tsunami in Sri Lanka. And the thing after my accident, I feel like it's brought a whole new empathy to my work. I always did this kind of work, but I really understand this idea of suffering and finding compassion in a world of chaos now. This is 1,200 people were killed in this train, and this woman's lost her 3 children to the sea. And she actually threw herself in the water, and I had to put my cameras down and hold her down until help came. This little girl's lost her parents. And then I photographed for a year poverty in America, which was absolutely devastating to see in our own country. This was for the Children's Defense Fund. And here in the Navajo Reservation, they're really, instilling a sense of culture in the next generation, in the kids, but then they go home and they live in places that have no running water, this empty shell of a bus, no heat, no electricity. And the hogans that they live in, same. Food banks, 700 to 800 food banks a day. And this is in Ohio. I didn't even know that they were to that extent. In the migrant workers in Texas. And the kids have all these different sort of disorders from not getting the proper food, behavioral problems. This is in Appalachia, Mississippi. And 16 people living in a trailer here in Mississippi, which brought me to covering Katrina. So then I was down there, this is with the National Guard, and then covering the devastation that happened after that, and then going into Afghanistan. And I always feel like I want to bring a face to the place. And all I'd heard about was being embedded in Afghanistan, and I really wanted to show the people and the beauty of the place and what was happening with the women and the children going to school and the girls that are fighting and so challenged just to go to classes there, kids that are being affected by landmines. So all of this has inspired me to start my own nonprofit, which is called the Faces of Hope Fund, and it helps children in crisis around the world because you hope that making a photo will make a difference, but I felt like I needed to do more. I thought, why not me? So now I'm able to give back to the cultures that I photograph. Burqa shopping, I'll take the blue one. Not very fun. And this I call, "Are you my mother?" Can you imagine trying to find your mom in a supermarket? So the women were all so amazing. They came up to me and they'd throw their burqas over me and thank me for coming. And this was a women's park that they invited me to where they actually can live without, to not have their burqas covered. And just a quick little dichotomy, here I was covering a $10,000 a night resort in the Turks and Caicos when I got a call, there's just been an earthquake in Haiti, how soon can you get there? So next thing I knew, I was sleeping in these people's yard for 3 weeks. And again, trying to find compassion in a world of chaos. How do you make people care when you hear 300,000 people have been killed in an earthquake? And these people were so incredible. Every morning the grandmother would make a little thing of coffee for me and have a little bowl of water for me to wash with. And when I finally got my UN evacuation flight out, I opened up my camera bag and there were 2 pounds of coffee in there that the grandmother had stuffed in there. So, it always seems like the people that have the least give the most. This little girl has gone spontaneously blind just from the devastation that's happened there. She wasn't even hit, so she was asking me to sing something in French. And then I guess I'm a terrible singer because then she begged me to stop. But these priests I had photographed these dead bodies, and then 2 days later I went back and these priests were blessing the bodies, and I brought bulldozers to give them the dignity, the dignified burial that they deserved. And then you turn around and you see moments like that and the resiliency of the kids there. So I was able to bring tents for Haiti. Some latest work, I've been working with Burmese refugees. This is in Thailand. And I'm working to get them a mobile medical unit there because you can see they live in utter filth and devastation, and they don't. We've gotten a little school going for the Burmese. And this is circling back to covering the tsunami in Sri Lanka. This man is bearing 5 family members. And I stopped and I took these photos. And then we were the 2 most unlikeliest of people. Here he was, this Muslim man reading from the Quran, and I just stopped and I held his hand and said, "I'm so sorry." And he just said, "Please don't forget about us." And I feel like that's why I do what I do, because I don't want these people to be forgotten. And to see, thank you so much for sharing this opportunity to show you a little bit of my world and theirs. Thank you so much. Thank you.